Hello, and welcome to a new build order guide. This one is going to be for a generic 24+2 3TC boom. This can also be used, similar concept as this, if you have 4 deer and a civ with an economy bonus to do a 23+2 3TC boom. Though if you only start with your traditional 8 sheeps, your 3 deer, sort of the minimum amount of food that you'll spawn with on arena, whereas you could always spawn with 6 cows instead, which gives you 100 more food and 4 deer. If you start with a minimum, this is what you're going to be pulling off most of your games. 3TC booms have a lot of advantages, and they do have some disadvantages. I still recommend this as pocket in a team game. I wouldn't really recommend this as flank, because as a flank, going up 1 or 2 pop later, opening with a monastery or siege workshop to defend, as well as in 1v1s, that's a bit more common, especially 1v1s where you might want to grab some relics. So, I'm going to put a time on screen right now that you can skip to if you want to just skip this entire introduction. And the build order will start right after that. Just a quick advert, the link to the AoE2 Arena Discord is in the description. That is a community Discord for this channel. We also play a lot of games, especially ranked queues, looking for Arena. We do play a lot of games, we play every evening. There's coaching, there's some free guides in there. If you have any questions, you could ask there and get instant answers. And it's a generally nice community, I think, that you probably want to join if you enjoyed the content on this channel. For those of you who stuck around for the introduction, this is going to be quite a tight build order for some people out there. This is a mill before lumbercamp start. If you don't know what that is, you do 6 sheep, and instead of 4 on wood, you do 1 straggler, 4 villagers go to berries, next villager goes to get the boar, you do a couple more stragglers, and you do that until you could afford a lumbercamp. What this does is effectively takes your berries in a more efficient way. And the reason we do this is because you will have more food. With a lot of booming, you want to have just enough food. You want to be as tight on the wood as possible if you can be. So you want to have 0 wood when you click up and 6 villagers on wood to ensure that you're going to have the wood for your upbuildings, for example. Or you could have a couple more, and every one more you need to plan to make farms with the extra wood that you're going to have. So why is it more efficient to take your berries first? Well, strictly speaking, you are more villagers on food early. You're going to have 4 villagers on berries anyway. But if they're earlier, that means you'll have more food by the time it comes to clicking up. This doesn't matter for builds that are quite high in population, where you finish your berries before clicking up the castle age, normally with a normal 6 sheep 4 wood start. Because by the time you finish taking the berries, you have the same amount of food. It's just, if you normally finish the berries after you click up the castle age, with a build where you start with berries first, you will have that food now rather than after you click up. So for faster build orders, this is almost essential. And if you have an economy bonus, you could use this to get even faster booms. For example, Ethiopians and Britons, 22+2, no problem whatsoever. Main advantages of this build: you can respond to aggression faster than a 4TC. 4TC you click up a lot later. With this, you'll be clicking up in the 22xx mark, you'll be hitting Imperial Age before 26 minutes, around the 26-minute mark if you're a little bit slow. You can assist your flank a lot easier because of this. A lot of realistic scenarios. If your flank is, for example, Portuguese, they do Monk Treb. They can easily kill their opponent, but if the pocket comes with Hussar, you need something to fight that quick. Or even just mass like I see that quite a lot of games. It happens all the time to us. So this gets your halberdiers a lot faster than a 4TC will, gets them forward, a lot of army really quickly, and you could easily have, 30 army by the time you'd start making army with the 4TC. It's easier to execute when you're in the castle age. It's less snowballing out of control. You don't have 4TCs making villagers to 3 different resources, for example, that you need to keep track of. It can be quite easy in that regard, although, as I said, 3TCs have to be tight. It's also best for time-centric units with power spikes that fall off later on. For example, Cavalier. You can get a lot of Cavalier early and fast if you're a civ. For example, Malians, they have very good Cavalier that you can be using, and a nice boom. But they start falling off later when you are, more against Paladins. But if you could get a lot of Cavalier first before they could even start making their Cavalier, when they're upgrading to Paladin, you could kill their production, you could easily kill their flank, you could do a lot more damage really early, and that might just pay off for not being able to afford the upgrades quite as early. This also applies to things like Arblast, you wouldn't really be doing from pocket though. But hopefully the concepts of this help with your other units. For example, being flank and you want to boom. As I said, couple pop up, get Monstray or Siege Workshop or something to defend with depending on what you're going to be against. And obviously Halberdier can always be quite important to get. As for disadvantages, this is worse economy than a 4TC, there's no doubt about that. It's just you get units faster that can pay off. You finish booming a lot later. Around, 22, 23 minutes, probably about 21, 30, 22. That's usually when a 4TC with, same civ, same eco bonuses, where they'll start paying off quite a lot more. Click up a minute later, sure, but you just finish booming so much later, your economy is quite a lot worse in terms of resources, and the units will start pouring out for the 4TC player. After maybe 5 minutes, having early units isn't going to seem so significant, you're going to have a lot more with the 4TC. Tower builds are also required for 3TC. It's very centric on getting the 3TCs up as soon as possible, which means sending as many villagers as you can to build them when you can, getting up as quickly as possible, which requires really tight builds. 4TC is a lot more relaxed. You could go up a pop later and it doesn't make such a big difference. You're still going to be ahead of a 3TC in terms of economy in the end. So you have to be really focusing on that. So without further ado, let's just jump into the build. So as usual with all our starts, you'll start with using 2 of your villagers, the 2 that are closest together to build one house, the other one to build the second house, and queuing up 4 villagers. Good places to build your house, just generally keep them more than 3 tiles away from your TC, that way you can ensure you can fit farms around it, and you shouldn't have any issues. And obviously with this one, you want to do something similar. You should have some view of some of your resources, try not to stick a house, like for example in the middle of your gold here. And yeah, that's all you really need to know to start. Something that may be different based on your patch version is the location of your starting sheep. Make sure you shift queue your villagers so they go directly onto the first sheep, by the way. In older patches, they used to only spawn on the left semicircle of your TC. In this patch, they always spawn on the bottom right of your TC. It's useful to pay attention to these things in your current patch where your sheep may spawn. They could change the pattern for all I know depending on future versions, and if they do, it's useful that you know to check for these things. So we're going to push some deer now. There are some caveats to pushing deer, but obviously they have a massive benefit. The first thing we really want to consider is that we only have one dead animal at one time. So in arena, you tend to want to push your deer when, one is just about to finish one animal. So we have our 6 on sheep, right now deer, but we're just pushing deer. Next one goes to a straggler and builds a house. It's probably not the best place to build a house, considering the lumbercamp location here I'm looking for. But that's fine. You'd always, instead of push your deer directly there, have a little bit of a mix around. So after the one on straggler, he builds a house, goes to straggler, then it's 4 on berries. Oh, that's a bit weird. That's fine. If you have 6 villagers on a deer, they will for sure collect all of it. You only need 4 villagers, so that's fine. Should probably also mention times you should push deer to keep one animal. Usually right away after 1 or 2 sheep, and then instead of sending your villager to go and get the boar when it comes to that villager in the build, just put that villager on the deer, and then you'll just send a villager to go and get the boar when you're ready. Usually go get that boar when you have 1 full animal left, 1 deer or 1 sheep, you've just started taking it with all your villagers. That's usually a good time to send a villager to go and get the boar in. Make sure when you're sending villagers to your berries, you have 2 on each side. Deer's going to be a little bit early, but that's fine. So when should you push your deer? Early is quite good. If you can't do it early, then you will need to probably push it just before you take your first boar. After you take your first boar, before you get the second. Don't go and get the second. Or after you take your second boar. Although I prefer to get the food in much earlier. I prefer not to take sheep that early, if I can avoid it. Now we have 6 villagers on sheep, 1 straggler, 4 berries. Now we need to go and get the boar. If we wait for this next villager, the deer that we're on is going to be nearly depleted. and we're going to have idle time on their TC, we're going to have to start taking a sheep, maybe. And then when the boar does come in, the sheep's only half eaten. So, as I said before, if you get onto an animal, as soon as you get onto an animal or sheep, the last one you want to take before the boar, then it's good to send a villager right away. And then, just when the next one comes out, just let them take their place. So you're switching those two villagers. You can then put your scout on auto-scout if it's a team game. It's always really nice to auto-scout in team games now because you don't need to communicate with your team as much just about scouting really. If you need your scout, if they need your scout, then that's perfectly fine. But, you know, if they don't, then don't worry about it. Your scouts will work well together with all the scout your scout areas that you don't have scouted. That's if you have shared exploration or Portuguese though. If you don't, your scout will probably end up running into your allies' base. So after we get the boar, that villager, the next two villagers go to stragglers. Here, we're just going to make sure that we shift queue our villagers, so they stay on each side of the berries, 2 on each side. The next villager, after the next 2 on stragglers, they'll go build a couple of houses on the way to build a lumber camp. And the next villagers that we send, they'll go to wood as well. Here we have 120 food. 120 food is actually quite low. We don't have so many villagers on the board though. But between 100 and 160 food on the board, depending on how far away your next one is, that's when you want to go to get the next one. So when you have 100 wood from stragglers, sorry, I sent them to the wrong place. Send those villagers from the stragglers to build a lumber camp. We're going to want 8 on wood here. Pull those back a little bit. We're just doing this until we have 20 pop. If you've seen the double cast iron buy video, then you'll be more familiar with this. I will probably consider making a dedicated guide to mill starts and all the things you need to know. So don't worry too much about that. Make sure you spread out these villagers as much as possible. Make sure they're all taking different trees, not colliding in with each other. There's only 7 here. Did I accidentally send 1 here? I think I did. Yes. So until you're 20 pop, make sure they're all going to wood and you have 8 on wood. The next 2 will go to TC food, 21 and 22 population. And then the next 2, the last 2, as with most FCs, they will go to gold. Add farms when you can afford them. We're looking for 2 farms in the Dark Age, 1 on the way up to Feudal Age, when you can afford it. We should have 6 on the sheep. We'll have 7 right now because we haven't added the 3rd farm yet. But 6 on sheep is generally quite a good number to keep in mind because that's a good trade-off between having a lot of villagers in your TC bumping into each other and, you know, just having farms so you can start getting food from them earlier and also just not decaying so much is a good balance. So we're going to keep 3 farms, we're going to keep these villagers working. Keep an eye on your lumber camp, make sure that's working efficiently. And also keep an eye on these villagers, just to make sure they're behaving. Sometimes the shift queue, it likes to ignore it. Just like we're ignoring our scouts right now. We'll pretend it's off scouting in a TG. As I said, this strat I really recommend mostly for pocket TG if you need to be there fast with something. I wouldn't really recommend it for flank without Siege Workshop, Monstrate to defend, whatever. I've said this multiple times this video. Also, sorry if I sound a bit off, my throat's acting up a bit today. There's not so much we could do, except just make sure that our villagers are working efficiently. When we get to about 85%, grab 3 villagers from wood, or wherever really, preferably wood, and drag them to a place where you're going to build a market and a blacksmith. It's nice to build these buildings either as a part of a house wall, just leading towards your TC for example to give you extra protection if you're rushed, or just at the back so they don't get destroyed. They're still buildings that you need. So that 1 villager goes to gold and another villager goes to wood. We'll also be moving a villager from under the TC to wood. We want 10 on wood in total. And you may need to garrison to get the resources. As you can see, we had a lot of food. They were just all holding on to it. So depending on the order you do this, something is actually interchangeable with this build. And that's, you could have 6 on wood, then 2 on food, and then add the other 2 to get your 8 on wood. Or you can just do all 8 on wood straight away, as I did in this build, and then 2 to food. Entirely up to you, it doesn't make too big of a difference, just as long as you have 10 on wood on the way up. Get Horsecollar and double bed axe when you can afford it. Which should be almost right away, it's just that I almost forgot in this case. Embarrassingly enough, I did release a build order, which I did forget double bed axe completely. When you can afford it, buy 100 wood for 130 gold. The earlier you buy this, which is when I say when you can afford it, the better chance you have of that costing that price. In TGs, people can buy food all the time for various different reasons, change of builds, doing their own boom. The earlier you buy it, the better it is. It's only going to cost you 4 more gold for the next batch. So if you're not there on time, then sure, that's fine. So your berries are going to finish. These 4 villagers, they will build the TC. And for the villagers from stragglers, they'll build the other one. As you can see, almost 550 wood, which is what we need to build our TCs. So you want to pre-plan your build locations for your TCs early. And I did in this case. We've walled this off. We want to protect our main gold. And we want to protect this side of our base leading towards this TC. So these villagers will go to wood. And we will get bow saw when we can afford it. Now we want to build farms whenever we can afford to build one. We may also need to build a house, just so we don't forget later. But your TC should be up in time. Keep these 3 villagers on gold if you can. They can help you if you need to turn your build around for any other reason. You could just buy whatever you need to change, some wood for a siege workshop if someone's playing aggressive or whatever. So keep that in mind. We're going to buy another 100. So what you need to keep in mind here is that wood is really important. We want to keep these TCs sending villagers to wood. So we're going to make farms with the gold villagers as much as possible, just keeping some villagers on gold that we could use. And we're going to build a couple of houses just to make sure that we don't get housed up before we pop. With 3 TC, it can really creep up on you, this early population. Turn on automatic farm reseeding. You don't need it, obviously. You can just adapt to use to reseed farms manually, but that's how we do it. And when we can, again, buy the next 100 food. You don't need to keep buying food, but it's quite useful, and you know, it's an easy way to balance your economy right away. I keep forgetting that we're not using our scout. So when it comes to booming, what you're looking for right now is a goal. Your goal, 30 farmers. You might ask, why 30 farmers? Well, 30 farmers is around about the time where you could start doing other things. I've not been paying so much attention, idling quite a bit here. For example, that's when you'll get Wheelbarrow, that's when you start going on to gold. That's when you start doing all of these things. Nobody's dropping off food, really? Ugh. Disgusting. Just keep your TCs rolling as much as possible. Use your select all TC hotkey. And now they've finally changed it so whenever you queue up a villager, it'll queue up in the one that next needs a villager. Whenever we can afford it, add farms. This wood line up here is obviously going to be getting crowded. So we're going to want to move to this wood line, which is pretty fresh. Keeping 3 on gold early on is good enough. As I said, 30 farmers, that's what we're looking for. Surround your TCs, surround your starting mill. And we're going to be considering adding another mill. Usually you need to do that. We're going to be a little behind in population, but as you can see, it's 1930 and we already have 55 villagers. At beginners, 3 TC boom, you're looking for 50 villagers by minute 20 exactly. So we're nearly 10 villagers ahead of that. We're just going to add some more farms in a mill. We now have 30 farmers. This is when we need to start considering going to gold, getting the gold mining upgrade, getting Wheelbarrow. So when we can afford it, just grab Wheelbarrow. I also like to get the gold mining upgrade. The gold mining upgrade will let us have 10 on gold, and that will get us to the next stage easily. Then we want to add farms to 36. It's kind of where things start to explode a little bit. When you hit 30 farmers, you want to get Wheelbarrow, you want to go to 36 farmers, you want to get villagers on gold. 10 on gold, usually what I like to go for if I'm going for halberdier in this case. More gold later on if you need it. If you are going Arbalest, for example, you would still stick with the 30 to 36 farmers mark. But obviously after clicking up, you'd probably reduce your farmers down to maybe 25, 26, and you would move more villagers to wood and gold. We're going halves, so we're going to be going quite heavy on the wood. When we get to 10 on gold, or even just before then, it's nice to peel off some villagers and build our up buildings around the 21-minute mark. That's always a good benchmark for me. Then, after that, we just want to add farms with all our extra wood. And when we have 10 on gold, that's more than enough. So what up buildings? Well, you could use a couple of up buildings. If no one's taken any relics nearby you, then a monastery can be really, really helpful to have. Just grabbing those 1-2 relics is a nice little advantage. Otherwise, usually a siege workshop in a university, you'll always need text in a uni. And that can include things like masonry, chemistry, even goths themselves who might need bomber cannon. Just keep a villager always building houses as much as possible. Not so crucial with a 3 TC as compared to a 4 though. With 4 you really need to not drop the ball. If you do, you have problems. We have our up buildings, we can click up any second now. In fact, if you ring the town bell and just sell 100 wood for the extra food, wood, then we can. This is going to be slightly later Imperial Age because we didn't cancel that villager, but that's fine. So, we want to get heavy plough, we want to get our handcart. Most importantly, we don't need this much gold. We can pull our villagers off of this to start building our barracks. It's also nice to build houses towards the back. Always house wall around the front of your base, but if you're in a team game, a market's going to be here, their base is over here. Don't wall off this side, otherwise you're going to obscure the trade a little bit. When we can afford it, get a handcart, that's going to be a massive boost. And start getting our blacksmith techs. This just gets a 55xx Imperial time if we're late 26. Doesn't make too big of a difference, it's still a lot faster than a 4TC. With Goths, I like to build 6 barracks, Byzantines as well, something similar, they could even click up a little bit earlier. And they save resources just with clicking up. Again, I like to keep 10 on gold. What we could do with these villagers if we wanted to, if we feel we have too many on something, is move them to stone. Generally having 5 villagers on stone on the way up to Imperial Age will get you a castle soon enough. Not right away, but soon enough. Also, as we're talking Goths here, they do have faster production from their barracks. Oh, I didn't research pikeman upgrade. Thought I did. So you want to keep an eye on that. I like to have 6 barracks. Also delete your older lumber camps, that way when they finish chopping these trees, they'll move to trees nearer to this one. And there we are, we're Imperial Age. We're about to click research pikemen. Sell a little bit of that, that's perfectly fine to do. And we're going to see what happens. Oops, sorry. I keep forgetting there's a hockey. Keep your TCs rolling, keep everything running. We're going to see what we have before minute 27. Where's the upgrade? So minute 27 we have 20 halberdiers nearly fully upgraded. just blast furnace to go. We're going to add some more farms as and when we can afford. Sent a bit too many villagers there. And obviously add some more barracks if you need them. If you're 4TC, you're just going to be up by now and only just going to be starting to make units. Get 2-man saw when you can afford it, we just need a little bit more wood. You can even buy some of the resources you need. So, I'm not going to go over meta and how you're going to be playing this one in this video, but I just want to go over the build. So this is kind of what you could do, this is kind of what you're aiming for when you're doing a 3TC. I think we're going to be a little bit later here. Let's resign and go to the statistics, since we became one. 2600 Imperial Age time. Oh, 06. This was a little bit late. If you were paying a bit more attention than I was during this video, then that should be 25x6, no problem. 103 villager high by 28 minutes. If you're 4TC, you would be fully boomed by now. But this is quite a lot of resources collected, just believe me. And obviously, 28 mins, you'd only just be starting making army with a 4TC again. Having 40 army already, nearly full upgraded, for your civ anyway. This is very good for what you need. As I said, this is just kind of the basic order for generic civs. If even you have a slight eco bonus, like for example Berbers, they get a little bit more food overall, a little bit more resources technically in the end. They could be a little bit less efficient with their lumbercamps. Then you're going to be perfectly fine doing a 23+2 if you have 4 deer. Some civs, as I said, even Japanese can get away with less villagers. So keep an eye on your economy bonuses, and this is probably how you should be playing this one. Again, hope you enjoyed this video, and please check out the Discord linked in the description, and have a good day.